Guys, how's it going? It's your boy, Big Blue Drew 97 here, coming at you with a My Hero Academia discussion. And what will we be discussing today, you may be thinking? Well, you know, what just happened in the most current chapter, and the fact that Shigaraki's quirk of Decay is probably overpowered as fuck. As well as, you know, the fact that he also has this little quirk called All for One. So yeah, in this video I really want to discuss potentially like what additional quirks he could have because he is now the new user of All for One, as well as like how potent his decay is with examples from this current chapter, and basically where we could be going from here. And to start off, I really want to talk about the fact that Shigaraki now has All for One, meaning that he has the ability to give and take quirks away from other people, which, you know, would be very detrimental to the heroes, having Shigaraki be able to take away their quirks and give them to someone on his side, as well as the fact that he also has the Decay quirk. But the main thing that I want to bring up about All for One and One for All, especially when it comes to Shigaraki having All for One, is the parallels between the two quirks, and how One for All has the ability to store power and then pass it on to another user, and as it passes on, is able to gain like power, stockpile power, as well as stockpile quirks. While in contrast, or in parallel to it as well, All for One has the ability to take away quirks and give them away, and it also has the inherent ability of like taking multiple quirks into the body of the user, but that can be like very harsh for the user, especially if like their body isn't acclimated to the quirk. Like, for example, the main reason why All for One's able to handle All for One is because it was his body and it was used to it, which is why Shigaraki had to go through like a lot of different modifications over the past 4 months. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is I think that because Shigaraki is not the initial user of One for All, and we know for a fact that it's not a copy of the quirk, but it is the original quirk, that All for One probably is still just as powerful as when it was with its original user. But I think it's in the same vein as 9, where for the most part Shigaraki can probably only hold a select amount of quirks. He potentially, this isn't like definitively, this is just how I'm viewing it, and the quirks that I have on a little list are basically somewhat parallels to quirks that we have seen in the story that would be very beneficial to Shigaraki, and that he may have some connections with either through other individuals that he knows, such as Kurogiri, which I can start from there, or even when it comes to parallels between Deku's quirks and his potential quirks, meaning that this list could grow or shrink depending on how many quirks that we know from Deku. So I want to start with Kurogiri, because as we know right now, he is in jail, but he did have the quirk of like creating portals. So I think that one of the quirks that Shigaraki has potentially is a warping quirk that All for One, and I'm pretty sure Johnny had, where he was able to spew that black liquid and they were able to be transported anywhere. I think Shigaraki may have that quirk, and we know for a fact that the doctor Shigaraki made a copy of the quirk, so we know that it exists. So it could have potentially been implanted into Shigaraki, meaning that even if like they get someone that, even though they do not have Kurogiri anymore, they still have a way of like transporting to different places and getting away from villains if they ever get caught, or even technically could like warp into the detention center of Tartarus, the jail, to rescue other villains. So I think that that would be a good quirk for Shigaraki to have, as well as it ties a connection to Kurogiri, where it's like Kurogiri was his nanny, and then just having a warping quirk can be like very beneficial, as well as like connect to the fact that like his babysitter, for the most part, also had that quirk. Now, I have a few other quirks on this list that either are kind of parallels to the quirks that Deku has, or could potentially have, or are just like ways to cover Shigaraki's weaknesses, as well as like his weakness to Decay. And one of these quirks includes the quirk Air Cannon that we saw All for One use against All Might, where he was able to shoot off this like big, like fuck off like air cannon. I think that Shigaraki would have an ability like that, because even though in this current chapter we know that Decay used to be like a close range, like it has to be close combat stance for it to activate, but as Shigaraki has grown, it has become like more long range to the point where it has the ability to decay an entire building instantly, as well as, you know, half a city. But I still think that there is a possibility that because he has to be in contact with it, the ground or another substance for it to activate. Let's say there's a hero that can fly, Shigaraki doesn't have a way around it, and because Deku has the ability float, as well as he has the ability to shoot out air cannons, he could theoretically like never be touched by Shigaraki's decay, either from long distance or from long distance or even short range, and still do damage to him. So having a air cannon will allow him to potentially like attack people from long distance or even in the sky. But this leads into another quirk that he could potentially have. The other quirk that I really want to talk about, which is similar to Deku's float, would be airwalk. We've seen a one for all, not one for all for one, during the Camino Ward incident where he was able to walk on air. So having Shigaraki also have the ability to walk on air could also mitigate the inability to attack people in the air, especially if we're looking at Deku who has float, which for the most part, as far as you know, would give him the ability to fly, would give him access to the sky itself, where he can, if he's able to walk on the air, and we do know that he's fast, walk on the air, be able to attack people from the air and be able to decay them with ease. When it comes to Shigaraki, another problem that I've seen with him is that, yes, he's able to decay things just by touching them, but as far as we are aware, it's for the most part limited to his hands and his feet, or specifically hands, fingers, feet, toes. So meaning that if he gets hit anywhere else on his body, decay may not activate, meaning that he could be very susceptible to like blunt force trauma or long distance piercing attacks, or just long distance attacks that just attacks his body. So another idea that I was thinking about, a quirk that we have seen from All For One, is spear-like bones. We've seen All For One have spear-like bones pierce out his body, referring back to the time that he fought All Might for the second time. He had these spear-like bones like just appear on his arm as his arm got more muscular. And also, I don't think that he'll have Shigaraki would have any form of like augmentations to his body, like with his like speed or strength, because that will tie too much into the original All For One as well as All Might. And when it comes to Deku and Shigaraki, they for the most part do their own things and do not rely on pure strength. So I don't think that he'll have any strength augmentation quirks. But I think having a spear-like body, or have like spear-like bones appear off his body, would be very like beneficial to Shigaraki, meaning that a few things. One, they couldn't just go up to him, like hit him as hard as they can to try to knock him out, because they, a hero or someone could inevitably like stab themselves if Shigaraki were to make the bones spew all over his body, making it more defensive than it is attacking. But theoretically, let's say he can make decay come from any part of his body. Having the bone-like spears come out of his body could act like secondary or tertiary appendages, where like they touch the edge of that spear and decay could activate from there, meaning that if someone were to attack them, not only would they be stabbed, but they will also begin to decay as well. So that's a potential quirk that he could have. And another quirk that I was thinking that he could potentially have, and this is like a really big one, it doesn't directly tie into Deku or Kurogiri, but the quirk Life Force that we know that Dr. Shigaraki has, which makes sense because when you think about it, the original purpose of Shigaraki is to be the predecessor for All For One, who realized after his first fight with like All Might, and even probably prior to that, is that he will never like be able to live forever for the most part, and that he will eventually come a time where someone will try to defeat him and take him down. So he has to have an heir to basically live through that heir, so that his reign will still be like kind of absolute. So having Life Force, which basically doubles your life, like we know that the Dr. Kudai is like over 120, and we know All For One is like over 100 for the most part. So having someone who's extremely powerful like Shigaraki live like twice as long as a normal human would allow for the reign of villains to last longer, which is something that All For One really wanted. So a lot of the quirks that All For One has or could potentially have in Shigaraki we have to keep in mind is, at least at this moment, we haven't seen Shigaraki use All for One. We've only seen him use Decay, meaning that it could be very likely that even though he does have All for One, it could just be like, it could be like that physical augmentation in the same vein as One for All, where it like just increases like the power of his Decay quirk, which we have seen in the most recent chapter of My Hero Manga chapter 272, where by him just touching the ground from the hospital, which we know, relatively speaking, is like a significant distance away from the city, as well as like the other location where the hideout is, that from the hospital, it was able to spread from the hospital down a mountain into the city where Deku and all of the other students were, within like what we perceive to be seconds. And as far as we know, and we do know that he could like, that spread could happen quickly, but this is unprecedented because even when he was fighting Redestro, yes, it did destroy like a whole lot of the city, but that wasn't just like his Decay, that was also the strength of Redestro, as well as like him just recently activating the quirk. So I believe that this Decay that we're seeing in the city is significantly stronger than what we saw with Redestro, due to the fact that it's not just how much destruction is going on, but how fast it is spreading. And when it comes to tying that into All for One, it could just be like an augmentation of making it even more destructive, but it could also, in a way, just because the main point that I want to bring up is that All for One, as far as we know, has to like touch you to take your quirk, or have some type of his body touch you to take his quirk, which is in direct opposite or opposing what Shigaraki's power is that when he touches you, you instantly decay. So chances are high enough we may not see like a whole lot of powers of Shigaraki using All for One, or if we do, it may be equal to the number of powers we've seen Deku use, because if you know, Shigaraki is paralleling Deku not only with growth but like opposing ideals, as well as like the fact that he's the main villain and Deku's the main protagonist that they're eventually going to fight, and they're going to have conflicting ideals and purposes. It's just following down that parallel, and what would be another great parallel to have them both have a very similar quirk derived from brothers who are related, but also having similar quirks. Like we know that Deku is quirkless, but he has One for All, which has 7 additional quirks, which include Float and Black Whip. But then it could be possible that Shigaraki could get additional quirks as well. And probably a quirk that he probably will get is a quirk that is either like prevents Decay from affecting his body, because we do know that Decay also is indiscriminate with its effect. It will affect Shigaraki, which it has. When he used it against Redestro, it was cracking his hands and his feet, as well as like when he first activated it, or when it first like came into fruition, every time he scratched his eye, it would start to crack, and that was kind of like his quirk manifesting. So he could get a quirk with All for One, where it prevents his own quirk from affecting him, and it could also get a quirk that like is selective activation, like in the case of Eraser, where he could like erase his Decay quirk to use All for One, and then once he does, then he can reactivate his quirk to decay them, which is another thing that is very possible, because we do know that the Doctor was looking into Eraser when he during the time where Aizawa and Oboro were fighting that villain and Oboro died. Kudaigaraki was like, hey, I really wanted that kid's Eraser quirk. So that is also a possibility that there could possibly be a quirk out there that can deactivate other quirks on a whim, and then Shigaraki gets it so that he could get both the benefits of Decay without its detriment, as well as using All for One. So yeah, this is pretty much like all I really wanted to talk about with Decay. There's not a whole lot that we can really say now, besides the fact that like it's very destructive, and at this moment Shigaraki seems to have like a lot of control over it, but for me it doesn't seem like he has like control over like how far the Decay can go. It just starts decaying, and it probably won't stop until he either removes his hand or like he wills it to stop, but we just don't know at this moment. So yeah, that's pretty much, like I said, all I really want to talk about with this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you like, comment, subscribe, do all of that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in the next video. Goodbye for now.